Very good morning. So in this particular video I am going to give you information regarding that the difference between seeds and the commercial grain. So in the first lecture schedule, first video, I have given a definition for seeds and various quality parameters for the seeds. So after knowing that quality parameters for the seeds, you may interested to know the difference between the seed or grain. So you may have a opinion of whether both the seed and grain are one and the same, or is there any difference. But seed technology point of view, a lot of differences are there between that seed and grain. So if you declare one particular metal as a seed, that should be a viable one. But for the material used for consumption, normally known as a grain, so we never bother about whether it's a viable or non-viable. If it is a viable or non-viable, we are using that particular material for consumption purpose. But if you say this is a seed, that should be of viable nature. The more appropriate word is that should be germinable, because germination alone, that seed is germinable. It says that that particular seed have the ability to produce normal seedling under favorable condition. So that kind of a degree of aliveness must be there. So seed is a viable, grain may or may not be viable. And then if you say one metal as a seed, that should satisfy certain minimum seed standards prescribed by the government of India in the name of Indian Minimum Seed Certification Standard. So in the Indian Minimum Seed Certification Standard, for each and every crop, they have given minimum requirement. Say example, if it is a paddy, in the case of paddy, and the seed germination should be minimum 80% must be there. So then only you can sell that particular seed as a seed in the market. Similarly, a different class of seeds also there. So all those things we are going to discuss in the upcoming classes. And then similarly, that seeds should have a physical purity and a desirable level of moisture content. So these are all the main thing as far as that seed is concerned. Whereas in the case of grain, we never bother about that kind of quality standard. For consumer point of view, mainly they will look at that physical purity of the material purchased for consumption. Physical purity also, say example, they are buying rice for consumption purpose, means mainly they look for that so whether that material is free of any stones or not. Okay, if at all any stones are there, the physical purity get affected. Not only that physical purity, appearance is affected, the consumer also in a position to do for further processing for removal of the stones and all those things. So for grain, normally they will look at only that physical purity, whereas for seeds we have to maintain physical purity, germination and genetic purity, moisture content, all those properties. Then seeds should have a genetic purity that I already mentioned, but in the case of grain we never bother about that genetic purity and all. If it is really that grain also, if you look at that genetic purity, if you try to maintain genetic purity in the case of grain, then that is really very good thing as far as that consumer point of view, because that whatever that grain we are going to purchase, everything is a genetically pure, means that cooking time, uniformity in cooking, and same level of consistency in all the grains subjected to cooking, that and all will be there. Suppose two varieties are mixed, what will happen? One variety may be get cooked early, the another variety that not yet cooked. So in both in one pot of cooking, you may have a grain at different level of consistency. That also sometimes create problem. So because of that, now the consumers also looking for a grain with a certain level of uniformity. So that also getting these word also getting popular among the consumer, but as on date we are not maintaining any genetic purity in the case of a grain. We never bother about that one. But if you say that is a seed, we should maintain their genetic purity also. For selling of the seeds, as per the Indian Seed Act, that seed material for sale purpose, that should be labeled. So labeling is compulsory but the certification is a voluntary. So that labeling and the certification, those items we will discuss in the seed certification lecture schedules. So for selling of the seed, that should go with the labeling is compulsory, but the certification is voluntary. Whereas for selling of that grain, no need to put up any label or certificate, all those things. Simply we can say sell that particular material in the open market. So seed again mainly used for sowing purpose and not for consumption purpose, whereas that grain mainly used for consumption purpose. Consumption either food or used as a feed for the cattle, or sometimes that grain may be used as a raw material for preparation of a newer product. Say example, in the case of wine industries or any alcoholic beverages industries, the barley grain and all used as a raw material. Similarly for tapioca, that tubers, that also a planting material. So those materials used for that sacco preparation and other product preparations. So grains mainly used for consumption either in the form of food or a feed for animals, or may used as a raw material for production of industrially important products. Then seed is produced after thorough rogging. So in the case of seed production, we have to do that rogging operations. Rogging means removal of the off-type plants. Off-type here, off-type means other variety of the same crop. Say example, that crop intended for the variety intended for seed production is Trichy 1. Trichy 1 is one of the paddy variety. So you are raised Trichy 1 crop for the purpose of seed production means. In the same field, if at all any Trichy 2, other variety of the paddy, Trichy 3, other variety of the paddy, materials are available, that should be removed from your field, or otherwise the pollen grains of Trichy 2 or Trichy 3 that able to pollinate with your seed crop, Trichy 1. Particularly paddy, there won't be much issue, but in the case of cross-pollinated crop like maize, bajra and sunflower, the presence of the other variety in your seed production field definitely get crossed with your seed crop, that ultimately affect the genetic purity of your material. Okay, so I already told you, if it is a seed purpose, there we have to maintain the genetic purity. Once these kind of op types and all available in your field, definitely that will affect the genetic purity of your material. So genetic purity of your material is not able to maintain by you or the farmers, you cannot sell that particular material as a seed in the market. But in the case of grain and all, the farmers never bother about the presence or absence of the other variety of the same crop. If at all any other variety of the same crops plants are available in the field, they will retain them and they will harvest that produce from both the material. So and that will be used for consumption purpose, because in the case of a grain we never bother about genetic purity. So in the case of seeds, that rogging operation is very important. The rogging means removal of the off types, that is a pollen contaminants and other unwanted materials. Okay, so that is a very important operation as far as that seed is concerned. Seed should be converted as a grain. If a situation is warranted, we can convert seed into a grain. Provided the seed is not treated with any poisonous chemical. Sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times, immediately after harvest, cleaning and processing, seed will be stored. During storage, that seed may be attacked by the pest and diseases. To avoid pest and disease attacks, seed will be treated with some poisonous insecticide as well as fungicide. So the treatment is mainly to give a protection to your seeds against pest and disease attack. Once you treat the seed with poisonous chemical, we can use that material only for sowing purpose. We cannot convert seed into a grain in this particular case. So if at all that seed is not treated with any of such poisonous chemical, at the time we can convert seed into a grain. But in the case of a grain, at any times we cannot convert grain into a seeds, because during grain production we never bother about the genetic purity of the material. We never do that rogging, so there won't be any purity with reference to genetically. So because of that issues, at any cost or at any point of times we cannot convert grain into a seed. So that is the thing. Then drying of the seeds. So the first lecture itself I told you the importance of maintaining the moisture content of the seeds. So immediately after cleaning and grading and before storage, seed will be dried and the moisture content will be reduced to the level of 6 to 10% in the case of orthodox seeds. So that is mainly for making that seed metabolic activity at a slow rate. So by that way we can make our seed to survive for a longer period of time by spending minimum amount of energy. So here we are making that seed to survive in the expenses of minimum energy. So for achieving desirable moisture content, we have to do the drying. So here that seeding is a living entity. We have to safely remove the moisture content. At any cost, the seed should not be exposed to high temperature. So here the drying should not be exposed to 110 degree Fahrenheit for cereals and not more than 90 degree Fahrenheit for vegetables. So in terms of degree Celsius, the maximum temperature should be 40 degrees Celsius. If it is beyond 40 degrees Celsius, that may induces escape of all the three forms of water: pre-water, bound water, adsorbed water, like that. Three types of waters will be there. So all the three types of water and its role in seed structural maintenance, all those things we will discuss in the seed drying. So here at any cost the seed should not be exposed to more than 40 degrees Celsius for the purpose of seed drying. So less than 40 degrees Celsius we have to expose, and we have to slowly, stage by stage, we have to remove the moisture content. So by that way only we can achieve that desirable moisture content without loss of that germination potential of the seed material. Whereas grain, it's not a living material. You can expose the material to high temperature and you can reduce that moisture content at any level. So that is the thing. Then during storage, the seeds are to be protected not only from the pest and diseases but also from viability and vigor losses. So how we are going to achieve all those things I discussed in the seed drying and that insecticide treatment. So by the way of adapting that proper drying and giving insecticide and fungicide treatment for the seeds, we are going to get protection for these kind of both biotic and abiotic stresses during storage. Whereas in the case of a grain, not necessary to protect against the loss of vigor and viability, because in the case of grain we are not trying to preserve the viability of the material. So whether it's a viable or non-viable, we will consume both the kind of material. So no need to maintain that vigor and viability and all. Then seed may be treated with a poisonous chemical. So that is for giving a protection to the seeds against storage, fungi, bacteria and insects. Whereas the grain, that should not be given with any poisonous chemical treatment, because this is mainly used for consumption purpose. Okay, so that is the thing. All the living process like respiration, metabolic activity should be there in the case of seed, because the seed is a living entity. So the seed will undergo the respiration and metabolic activity, everything will be there. So whereas in the case of grain, it is not living things, it's maybe a dead one. So here we cannot expect that kind of biological process occurrence. So these are the main difference between that seed and grain. So I hope by now that viewers get a clear idea about what is grain, what is seed. So what are the properties that are there for seed, and the properties are associated with the grain. So with that idea, I wanted to give you that difference between the seed production and grain production, or seed production or crop production. That also another important thing, that is a practical thing. So we must know. So if you know that things, automatically you can involve yourself in the seed production operations. The next day you will have the valuable product in your hand in the name of seeds. So you can start up your own industry. So by that way you can earn money also. So before that, you must know what is seed production, how we differ from the grain production. Seed production means it's a systematic way of mass multiplication of the seed material. During that multiplication process, we have to ensure all the quality parameters prescribed by the Indian minimum seed certification standard. So we have to maintain that one. So in Indian minimum seed certification standard, they given two standards. One is a field standard, another one is a seed standard. So under field standard, so many items are there. Similarly, the seed standard, so many items are there. That all we are going to discuss in detail in the seed production chapters. So we have to maintain the standards during the entire course of production, starting from seed to seed. We must be vigilant, and we have to do the multiplication operation in a systematic and scientific way. So that is a thing. So if you follow on that systems given by the Indian minimum seed certification standard, so definitely we will have a seeds. So if you are able to produce a seeds with all the desirable quality parameters, definitely you will get more income when compared to that grain productions. And also you can supply higher quality seed material for the next season sowing also. So with that introduction, now we can discuss about that difference between the seed production and grain productions. So here the differences are given. So for seed production purpose, we have to use authenticated seed as a source material, because whatever that material you are going to sow in the field, that alone get germinated, that corresponding plant will be developed. So if used material is highly germinable, means more number of germination, more number of plant population, adequate number of plant population will be there. Suppose but the germination itself is low, so the number of plants available in the field will be reduced. Again you have to go for that resowing. So if you go for resowing, there won't be any uniformity with reference to the first sown seed material and the second sown seed material. So a plant will be available at various stage of development. The above all, the used material is not genetically pure, means you will have more than one variety plant material in the field. Again that also create a problem. So for seed production purpose, that whatever that seed you are going to use for raising the crop, that should be a authenticated one or certified one. Certified one means that the quality of the seed is assessed, that is given with the certificate. That certificate that will have that information about that seeds, like what is the germination percentage, physical purity and genetic purity and moisture content. Everything is certified by the certified department people. But for crop production purpose, whatever that material is available with the farmers, simply they are using for crop production. So they never bother about that quality of the material used for the raising of the crops. And again, that the seed plot should be selected carefully for better performance as per that edaphic and environmental requirement. Yes, so that we have to select appropriate soil conditions for production of the quality seeds. The selected field is affected with this affected with salt or acidity or alkalinity, any other contamination, means that ultimately get reflected in the seed material. That if it is a acidic soil environment, if you raise that acidic soil susceptible variety, that pollen grain production will be affected. If at all any seed form, that seed may be shriveled one, undersized one. So there won't be any uniformity. There will be a developmental variations. So some of the developmental variations also heritable nature. So that may affect the homozygosity of your resultant seed material. So to avoid all those things, we must be very careful with reference to selection of land for cultivation of the seed crops. Whereas for crop production purpose, we never bother about that selection of the area and occurrence of the developmental variation. Simply we will take up that cultivation, whatever that material coming from that harvest, that entire thing will be used for consumptions. So but for seed production purpose, we have to give more attention towards selection of the land. That should be less influence on your seed and related plant characters. So that is very important. Then another important thing with reference to that seed production is concerns that the seed crop need to be isolated from other variety. So this is very important. Isolation means art of keeping the seed crop away from possible genetic contaminants, because that the pollen grains are the main contaminants. The pollen grains are able to travel in the air. Say example, in the case of paddy, there is a chance for dispersal of the pollen up to 3 meter. In the case of sunflower, the pollens are able to travel in the air up to 400 meter, 200 to 400 meter distance. So if at all that nearer to your field, the other farmer, they will raise other variety of the same crop, means the time of planting everything is the same. Particularly in the case of cross pollinated crops, there is a chance for contamination of both the field, because for the both the field are raised with the two different variety of the same crop. Say I can give you an example. So your land is raised with the co1 sunflower. The immediately next to your field, the other person field, that particular person interested to raise co2 sunflower, means here crops are same but varieties are two different varieties. So character wise, these plant co1 and co2, lot of variations will be there. So if both the plants comes to flowering at the same time, so because of that because of that wind flow, or through biological agents like insects and other butterfly and all those things, or honeybees and all those things, they will visit both the field. At the time of their visit, they transfer the pollen from co1 to co2, similarly from co2 to co1. So these leads to loss of genetic purity of your resultant seed material. So to avoid that one, we have to isolate our seed crop from other possible contaminant, particularly from other variety of the same crop. So that is very important. So here different kind of isolations are there. So that and all we are going to discuss in the upcoming classes. Whereas in the case of grain productions, the farmers, they never bother about maintenance of the genetic purity. So no need to maintain any isolation distance and all between two different variety of the same crop. And so far I have narrated various skill oriented operations need to be carried out for seed production purpose. So seed production is really a skill oriented farming operations, whereas crop production is not no special skill is needed. Traditionally what the farmers they are following, simply they are following, so without any scientific way, simply whatever they know, they are following. So then maintenance of the genetic purity is important in the case of seed production, whereas crop production we never bother about that genetic purity. Then rogging is a compulsory practice as far as that seed production is concerned. So through rogging only we can ensure that genetic purity. The crop production we never bother about that rogging and all. Whereas harvesting of the material, so here that seed so two kind of maturities are there. One is a physiological maturity, another is a harvestable maturity. The difference between that physiological maturity and harvestable maturity is the plant will attain physiological maturity first. Physiological maturity means the stage at which, so this is very important one, the stage at which optimum accumulation of reserve food take place in the storage organ of the seeds. If it is a monocot, and that endosperm is fully packed with nutrients at the stage of physiological maturity. Whereas if it is a dicot, the maximum accumulation of food reserves will take place at the time of physiological maturity in the case of a cotyledon. In the next day of physiological maturity, there won't be any incoming nutrients from the mother plant. And also at the time of physiological maturity, the biological connection between the mother plant and the seed is detached. So from the day of physiological maturity, the seed will remain attached to the mother plant physically. So physical attachment, there won't be any biological connectivity. The seed also ready for harvest. The only drawback at physiological maturity is the moisture content of the seed will be more than 17%, some of the cases even more than 30% also. So if it is 17% or more than 17% moisture content, means now there won't be any biological connection between the mother plant and the seed. But the seed attained full maturity, seed is fully packed with nutrient, and the moisture content also more than 17%. So the moisture content is more than 17%, means that seed able to produce more amount of the hydrolytic enzymes. Once more amount of hydrolytic enzymes are formed, whatever that material stored in the endosperm or in the cotyledon, that will be subjected to that degradation process. That is, normally the starch and the carbohydrate are stored in the form of starch. If it is remain in the form of starch, so that will be less amenable for the metabolic activity. So that in that form we can store for longer time. If at all the moisture content is more than 17%, that will produce hydrolytic enzyme. That hydrolytic enzymes convert that starch into glucose. Once the starch get converted into glucose, so that will be entered into the glycolysis. ATP will be generated. That almost all the ATP will be wasted. So we have to avoid all those points. Okay, so for seed purpose, what we have to do is, as and when that attain physiological maturity, before initiation of aging related phenomenon, we have to harvest the material and try to reduce the moisture content to the desirable level, 6 to 10% something. So by that way you can preserve whatever that food material accumulated in the endosperm or in the cotyledon as such. That preservation of the food material is very, very important for making that seed as more germinable and more vigorous. Once you are going to retain the seed merely for the purpose of reduction of the moisture content alone naturally, so you are going to take a risk. Okay, so fewer that I wanted to tell you that what is harvestable maturity. Harvestable maturity means that moisture and that the seed will remain attached with the after physiological maturity. The seed will physically attached with the mother plant and exposed to that sunlight. So because of that natural sunlight, the moisture content get reduced from 17% to 14% or 12%. So that will take 1 week to 10 days period of time from the stage of the physiological maturity. Mostly the farmer will retain the seed material until that attain harvestable maturity, because here the only advantage is reduction of the moisture content with the help of the natural light. But this is the only advantage. So many drawbacks are there, because if at all the sunlight intensity is less, what will happen? That seed with more than 17% moisture content and remain attached to the plant physically, so that going to be there. So seed will generate more amount of the hydrolytic enzymes, degradation will occur, aging will be quickened, that leads to loss of the quality of the seeds. And also you are going to keep that material in a open field condition for about a week to 10 days period of time. At the time that a seed is amenable for the pest and disease attack also. Here that moisture content also 17%, the seed is somewhat soft nature, so with that moisture content the pest and disease easily attack, particularly the insect easily pour the seeds and enter into the inside, and they will eat away that entire endosperm. So these are all the possibilities, these are all the risky events. So because of that, what we have to do is, as and when that seed attain physiological maturity, we have to harvest the crop and go for reduction of the moisture content to the level of 14%. So by that way you are going to slow down the metabolic activity that occur within the seed systems. If you are able to reduce that metabolic activity of the seed systems, you can make your seed to preserve all the nutrients as such without any degradation. So that is need of the hour. If you are able to retain your seed with all the biochemical constituents in an intact way, definitely that seeds will have a pakka seed vigor. pakka germinability. So that is the thing. So because of that, we have to harvest the crop as and when that attain physiological maturity. So we have to harvest and go for proper drying and reduce that moisture content. Then you can go for separation of the that cleaning and grading operation. All those things you can carry out. Whereas crop protection purpose, they never bother about whether the crop in physiological maturity and harvestable maturity. They always harvest the crop as and when they attain the harvestable maturity. Okay, so that is the thing. And then I already told you, if you harvest the crop at physiological maturity, the resultant seed will have a more vigorous and more germinable nature. Whereas here we are going to harvest the crop at harvestable maturity or field maturity. So because of that, here there is a very big question with reference to viability of the seeds. So mostly the seed will lose its viability, the degree of aliveness will be low. So that mainly used for consumption purpose alone. Here in the case of seed production, we are giving importance for the quality of the seeds. We never bother about the yield. Whereas in the case of crop production, they are giving more importance for the quantity and never bother about the quality. So because of botheration of the quality kind of things in the case of seed production, the yield may be lesser than the yield obtained in the crop production. Because in the case of seed production, mainly we are doing that roging and all. So at the time of roging, if at all any other variety plants are available in your field, that and all removed. So if you go for removal of the other variety of the same crop, that space will be remain empty. That space will be remain empty, and resultant 10 number of plants are removed means you are going to lose 10 number of plants yield related things. Whereas in the case of grain production, they never do that roging and all. So because of that, that all the things going to be there, whether it's the same variety or different variety, everything going to be there. So automatically the yield will be somewhat more than the seed production yield, but quality wise it's not at all good. So because of that, the seed is valued for more. I already told you, if you purchase 1 kg of the paddy for seed purpose or seed means, that is cost around 35 to 40 rupees. It's a minimum. Whereas if it is for purchase a grain for consumption purpose, that is cost around only 10 to 20 rupees. So here per kg itself, in the case of seeds, we are getting 20 rupees extra when compared to that grain. So that is the thing. So here it's a quality oriented business. Because of maintenance of the quality, you will be getting more income when compared to that grain production. So these are all the main differences with reference to that seed production, grain production. So with that, I am closing these particular sessions. Thank you very much.